We're talking about an important topic that's often overlooked and can be considered a bit cringy sometimes. The menstrual cycle. Larissa Savage with Carl Health is here and ready to bring us some valuable insight. Welcome.
Thank you.
Back, shall I say.
Glad
to have you here.
Yes.
So let's dive into this topic, right?
Yes.
So walk us through the phases of a menstrual cycle.
So I like to break it into two and then kind of put interrupters. Okay. So I like to think of it as alphabetical order because it's easy to remember that way. So follicular and then luteal. Oh. So we have the follicular phase, and what begins the follicular phase is your period. So your period comes, this is day one. Then in the middle of these two phases is ovulation, right? Where an egg is released, where we can hypothetically have a child or make a baby. And then we step into the luteal. This is where we're approaching our period again, but it's just kind of slowly phasing into that. So follicular, luteal, menstruation at the beginning, ovulation in the middle.
Okay, so walk us through the hormonal changes of each stage.
Yes. So what actually triggers our cycle starting, which people often get kind of confused about when I explain it, but day one is actually the first day of your period. So that is day one of your cycle. What triggers that is a drop in the hormones. So progesterone and estrogen, the main female type hormones, is what falls. And then we have our cycle, our period starts. So our period starts, and then once that goes away, our estrogen begins to rise. Now this is the best hormone, I would say, for females. So our estrogen begins to rise, and this is the one that makes us feel good. We feel confident. We tend to PR. So like if we're training, if we're running, if we're doing a big presentation at work, this is when we're like our best version of ourselves.
Like we can climb a mountain.
Yes. Usually we have an increased libido, so we have a higher sex drive during this time, and it's kind of like to prime you for ovulation, which is kind of interesting. So kind of, you know, the animal cycle, if you want to look at it that way. So as we approach that, we have that elevated estrogen, then we ovulate, and then progesterone takes over. So progesterone is the pregnancy hormone, so P&P is how I like to describe that. Progesterone tends to make us feel very calm, more relaxed. This is where we like to do our hikes. We like to maybe do meditation. We feel a little bit more at ease. And then all of those hormones drop. This is when we PMS. This is when we get irritable. We're a little bit more moody. And it's because our hormones have dropped, and then we start all the way back over and our cycle begins again.
Isn't it fun being a woman?
I think it's helpful, though, to understand why you might feel certain ways during your cycle, and that it's really related to those hormones and those rises and those falls that are happening.
And while that's happening on the inside, let's talk about the physical effects of your period. What's happening on the outside?
Sure. So I mean, it kind of depends. So if you think about it, at different parts of our cycle, you know, you see like increased acne and things like that. And part of that is going to be, people will say, oh, I'm on my period, like my acne is really bad.
Yeah, they get bumps, and sometimes they're sore too.
Yes, yes. And so then you can even have, as you approach your cycle, when I say cycle, when you approach your period, as those hormones change, people have like the breast tenderness. They have the bloating that they experience. I would say that the positive things that you feel are typically when you're leading up to ovulation. That's when you're not feeling bloated. You're not feeling like you're retaining water and things like that. You feel pretty good most of those times.
So how do you know, or how can you tell when you're experiencing a hormonal imbalance?
Sure. So this is like a hot topic on social media. People are like, I'm getting my hormones checked. I'm getting my hormones checked. And what I really try to caution my patients is, where are you at in your cycle that you're getting your hormones checked? So if you're at the beginning part of your cycle and you're getting ready to ovulate, that estrogen is going to be much higher than the progesterone. But then what happens at the latter part of your cycle is I expect the progesterone to be more elevated. So I usually encourage my patients, if your cycles are not looking similar month to month, if they're not within a couple of days of each other, then we worry that maybe there is something off with your hormones because it's not triggering that monthly normal cycle. Because it's hard to decide that your estrogen is low because it depends on where you're at within that month.
And that makes a lot of sense, because oftentimes when you go to the doctor, one of the first things they ask, when was the start or the end of your last period?
Exactly.
Wow, so it all comes full circle in some kind of way.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate you for coming in and helping keeping our ladies informed.